I never thought words could cut deeper than a knife. But that afternoon, standing in my own kitchen, I learned how wrong I was. My name is Eleanor, and for 30 years, this house had been my sanctuary. Every corner held a memory. The living room where I rocked my son to sleep during thunderstorms. The kitchen where I baked his birthday cakes from scratch because we couldn't afford bakery ones. The garden where I planted roses the day he took his first steps. When Daniel brought home his wife 3 years ago, I welcomed her with open arms. Her name was Melissa, and she had a smile that could light up a room. I thought I was gaining a daughter, not losing my place in my own home. That Tuesday started like any other. I was preparing lunch, humming softly as sunlight streamed through the window. Melissa walked in with 2 of her friends, their laughter echoing through the hallway. I smiled, wiping my hands on my apron. "Eleanor, bring us some tea in the living room," she called out, barely glancing my way. I nodded, used to her casual requests by now. As I arranged the cups on the tray, I heard her voice drift from the other room. "Oh, don't mind her," Melissa said to her friends, her tone light and dismissive. "She's basically just the maid here. Does all the cooking and cleaning while I handle the important stuff?" Her friends laughed. I stood frozen, the teapot trembling in my hand. The maid. She called me the maid. In my own house. The house I bought with money I earned working double shifts at the hospital. The house where I raised my son alone after his father left us, with nothing but debt and broken promises. I carried the tray into the living room, my hands steady despite the storm raging inside me. I set it down gently, smiled at her guests, and walked back to the kitchen. Nobody noticed the tears pooling in my eyes. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Her words played on repeat in my mind. "Just the maid here." Each replay felt like another cut. My son was asleep in the room next door, the room I painted yellow because it was his favorite color when he was 5. Did he hear her say that? Did he agree? Something inside me shifted that night. A quiet resolve settled in my chest where warmth used to live. I had given everything to this family, but somewhere along the way, I had become invisible. No, worse than invisible. I had become the help. As the first light of dawn crept through my window, I made a decision. If she wanted a maid, I would show her exactly what that meant. But to understand what happened next, you need to know who I was before I became the ghost in my own home. I was 23 when I held Daniel for the first time. His father, Marcus, had promised me the world. Instead, he gave me 3 years of empty words and mounting bills before disappearing one winter morning, leaving only a note that said, "I can't do this anymore." I could have crumbled. Part of me wanted to, but when I looked at Daniel's tiny face, something fierce awakened inside me. This little boy would never know hunger. He would never wear shoes with holes or skip school because I couldn't afford books. I swore it on everything I had, so I worked. God, how I worked. I took a job as a nursing assistant at the county hospital. The shifts were brutal, 12 hours on my feet, dealing with chaos and heartbreak. But it wasn't enough. So I cleaned offices at night, mopping floors while the city slept. I learned to survive on 4 hours of sleep and black coffee. Daniel never knew we were struggling. On his birthdays, there were always gifts, even if I had to skip meals to afford them. When he wanted to join the soccer team, I found the money for cleats and uniforms. When he dreamed of college, I opened a savings account and fed it every penny I could spare. I remember the day I bought this house. Daniel was 12. We had been living in a cramped apartment where the heating barely worked, and the neighbors fought every night. I had saved for 7 years, working myself to the bone, and finally, I had enough for a down payment. "Mom, is this really ours?" Daniel asked, his eyes wide as we stood in the empty living room. "Every inch of it, sweetheart," I whispered, pulling him close. "This is our fresh start. I painted every wall myself. I refinished the floors on weekends. I planted the garden with my own hands, dreaming of the day Daniel would bring his own children here and we would watch them play among the flowers. When Daniel graduated college, I cried tears of joy. He had done it. We had done it. All those sleepless nights, all those sacrifices, they had led to this moment. He got a good job, met Melissa, fell in love. I was so happy for him. "Mom, I want Melissa and me to live here with you," he said one evening. "This house is huge and you're all alone. We can be a family together." My heart soared. A family together? That was all I ever wanted. I welcomed Melissa like the daughter I never had. I helped her decorate their room. I learned to cook her favorite meals. When she was sick, I made her soup and brought it to her bedside. I genuinely loved her, or at least I loved the idea of her, the daughter I had always hoped for. But love, I learned, can be a one-way street. It started small. She would forget to thank me. She would leave her dishes for me to clean. She would make plans for the house without asking my opinion. I told myself she was just young, still adjusting to family life. I made excuses for her because I wanted so desperately for this to work. Then the requests became demands. The gratitude disappeared entirely. And slowly, painfully, I realized I was no longer the matriarch of this home. I was the woman who did the chores. If she had known what I sacrificed to build this life, to create this home where she now lived in comfort, would she have spoken differently? Would she have seen me as something more than the woman who served her breakfast? I wanted to believe she would. But deep down, I knew the truth. To her, I was never Eleanor the survivor, Eleanor the mother, Eleanor the woman who built something from nothing. I was just the convenient help who happened to live there too. The change didn't happen overnight. It crept in like frost, slowly covering everything warm until the cold was all that remained. At first, Melissa's manipulation was subtle. She would suggest things gently, always with that sweet smile. Eleanor, wouldn't it be easier if you did the grocery shopping on Tuesdays? That's when the sales are. Or, I think Daniel prefers his shirts ironed this way. You don't mind, do you? I didn't mind. I wanted to help. I wanted to be useful. But her suggestions evolved into expectations. Her requests became requirements. And somewhere along the way, my son stopped defending me. I noticed it one evening at dinner. I had spent 3 hours preparing Daniel's favorite meal, pot roast with all the trimmings, the way I used to make it when he was young. This is too salty, Melissa said, pushing her plate away with barely concealed disgust. I felt my cheeks flush. I'm sorry. I can make you something else. It's fine, she interrupted, her voice dripping with martyrdom. I'll just eat around it. Daniel, honey, maybe we should start ordering dinner more often. It's easier for everyone. I looked at my son, waiting for him to say something. Anything. He loved my pot roast. He used to ask for it every birthday. Maybe that's not a bad idea, Mom, he said quietly, not meeting my eyes. You've been doing so much around here. We don't want to burden you. Burden. The word hit me like a slap. Cooking for my son had never been a burden. It had been love made tangible. But I smiled and nodded, clearing the plates while Melissa scrolled through her phone, already searching for restaurants. The house I built began to feel foreign. Melissa redecorated the living room without asking, replacing my carefully chosen furniture with modern pieces that felt cold and impersonal. She hung new curtains that blocked the sunlight I loved. She even threw out my favorite armchair, the one I had rocked Daniel in as a baby, claiming it was too old and shabby. This is my home too, she reminded me when I protested weakly. I should feel comfortable here. And what about my comfort? I wanted to scream. What about my 30 years of memories? But I stayed silent, watching as my home transformed into something I barely recognized. Melissa's whispers to Daniel grew more frequent. They would talk in low voices behind closed doors. Sometimes I would catch fragments of their conversations. She's set in her ways. Maybe she needs more independence. Have you thought about assisted living? Assisted living. I was 53 years old, healthy and capable, and she was already planning to put me away like an old piece of furniture. Daniel's laughter, which used to fill the house with warmth, became rare. When we were alone together, he seemed uncomfortable, as if he didn't know how to talk to me anymore. Melissa had built a wall between us, brick by invisible brick. The worst part was watching her perform for others. When her family visited, she was all sweetness and light. Eleanor is such a blessing, she would coo, patting my hand. I don't know what we would do without her. Her mother would smile approvingly. You're so lucky to have such a helpful mother-in-law. Mine never lifts a finger. I would smile and nod, playing my part in her little show, while inside I felt myself disappearing. But the day she made me serve tea to her guests like hired help, something inside me cracked. I wasn't just invisible anymore. I was a servant in my own home. I carried that tray into the living room, listened to her laughter as she dismissed me, and felt the last thread of my patience snap. That evening, I sat in my room, the only space in the house that still felt like mine. I looked at the photos on my dresser. Daniel as a baby, Daniel's first day of school, Daniel's graduation. In every photo, I was there, smiling, proud, loving. When had I lost him? When had I become the woman in the background, the one easily dismissed and disrespected? I didn't have the answer, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. My silence had lasted too long. If Melissa wanted to treat me like a maid, then it was time to show her what a maid's life truly looked like. And more importantly, what happened when the maid stopped working. Monday morning, I made my first move. It was small, almost invisible. I simply stopped doing what wasn't mine to do. I woke up at my usual time, 6:30, but instead of heading to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, I made myself a cup of tea and sat on the back porch, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and pink. The air was crisp and cool. When was the last time I had simply sat and enjoyed a morning? At 7:15, I heard movement upstairs. Footsteps on the stairs. The kitchen door opening. Eleanor. Melissa's voice echoed through the house, confused. "Where's breakfast?" I took another sip of my tea and said nothing. She appeared at the back door, her silk robe wrapped around her, hair perfectly styled even at this early hour. "Didn't you hear me?" I asked where breakfast is. I looked at her calmly. I made myself tea. "There's plenty in the kitchen if you'd like some." Her eyes narrowed. "What about eggs? Toast? You always make breakfast." "I made breakfast for myself," I said, my voice even. "I assumed you could make your own." The shock on her face was almost comical. She stood there, mouth slightly open, as if I had just spoken in a foreign language. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her tone shifting to concern, though I could hear the irritation underneath. "Nothing at all," I replied, with a gentle smile. "I just decided to take things a bit easier. You said yourself I've been doing too much." "You were right. Thank you for pointing that out." She stared at me for another long moment before turning on her heel and marching back inside. I heard the kitchen cabinet slamming. A few minutes later, the smell of burnt toast drifted through the open door. It was a small victory, but it tasted sweet. Over the next few days, I continued my quiet rebellion. I did my own laundry and left hers in the basket. I cooked meals for myself, simple things, and left the kitchen spotless after I was done. When she came home to an empty dinner table, her confusion grew into annoyance. "What's going on with you?" she demanded on Wednesday evening. "Why are you acting like this?" "Acting like what?" I asked innocently. "I'm simply taking care of myself." "You're a grown woman, Melissa. Surely you can manage your own meals and laundry." "But you always—" "I know what I always did," I interrupted softly. "But I've realized I was doing too much." "You're right. I need to think about myself more." Her frustration was palpable. She wasn't used to me pushing back. For 3 years, I had been compliant, helpful, almost invisible. Now suddenly I had boundaries. Daniel noticed too. "Mom, Melissa says you've stopped helping around the house." "Is everything okay?" We were standing in the kitchen, just the two of us. I looked at my son, really looked at him. When had he grown so distant? When had he started seeing me through his wife's eyes instead of his own? "Everything is fine, sweetheart," I said calmly. "I'm just taking a step back. Melissa is very capable. She can handle things. But I've always done everything, yes," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "And maybe that was wrong of me. Maybe I made things too easy. Maybe it's time everyone learned to take care of themselves." He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot like he used to do as a child when he was in trouble. "She's really stressed, Mom. Her job is demanding." "So was mine," I replied quietly. "I worked 2 jobs, raised you alone, and still managed to keep a house running." "I think she can handle making dinner." He had no response to that. He simply nodded and walked away, and I felt a small crack in my heart. This was my son, the boy I would have died for, and he couldn't even defend me. But I had made my decision. I wasn't angry. I was simply done being taken for granted. By Friday, Melissa's sweet facade had completely crumbled. She confronted me in the living room, her arms crossed, her face flushed with anger. "What exactly is your problem?" she snapped. "You've been acting strange all week. If you have something to say, just say it." I set down my book and looked at her calmly. "I don't have a problem, Melissa. I'm simply giving you what you wanted." "What I wanted? What are you talking about?" "You called me a maid," I said, my voice quiet but steady. Last week to your friends, you said I was basically just the maid here. The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. That was just, I didn't mean, didn't you? I asked, because it felt very intentional. And you know what? You were right. I was acting like a maid, doing everything, asking nothing, accepting disrespect with a smile. But here's the thing about maids, Melissa. They get paid. They have days off. They can quit. She stood there, speechless, her perfect composure finally shattered. So I'm not your maid anymore, I continued, my voice soft but resolute. I'm not cooking your meals or doing your laundry or cleaning up after you. This is my house, and I'm going to live in it like it's my home, not my workplace. If you want a maid, I suggest you hire one. Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of anger and frustration. She had lost control, and she knew it. Daniel will hear about this, she threatened, her voice shaking. I hope he does, I replied calmly. I hope you tell him everything, and then maybe, just maybe, he'll understand what you've been doing to me. She stormed out of the room, and I heard her on the phone moments later, her voice high and agitated as she complained to Daniel. I didn't move. I simply picked up my book and continued reading. I wasn't being cruel. I wasn't seeking revenge. I was simply reclaiming my dignity, one small boundary at a time, but that was just the beginning. The real lesson was yet to come. The opportunity arrived in the form of a business trip. Daniel came home Monday evening with news. I have to go to Seattle for 2 weeks, he announced over dinner. Big project. I leave Thursday, Melissa's face fell. 2 weeks? But I know it's sudden, but this could mean a promotion. He squeezed her hand. You'll be fine. Mom's here. Something sparked in my mind. A perfect, brilliant idea. After dinner, I approached them both as they sat on the couch. Actually, Daniel, I think this is a perfect opportunity for Melissa. They both looked at me. Confused. Melissa has been saying for months that she should have more say in how this household runs, I continued, my voice pleasant and reasonable. She's absolutely right. This house should feel like hers too. So while you're gone, Daniel, I'm going to let her take complete control. Melissa's eyes narrowed suspiciously. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. You'll be the lady of the house. You'll manage everything. The cooking, the cleaning, the bills, the grocery shopping, the maintenance. Everything I usually handle. I'll be here if you need advice, but the responsibility will be entirely yours. That's actually a great idea, Daniel said, completely missing the trap. Melissa, you've been wanting more independence. This is perfect. Melissa looked between us, clearly sensing something was off, but unable to identify what. I suppose I could manage for 2 weeks. Wonderful, I said with a warm smile. I'll make sure you have all the information you need. That night, I prepared a detailed notebook. Every bill that needed paying and when. Every maintenance issue in the house. The grocery budget, the cleaning schedule, the meal planning. Everything I had been handling silently for years. I laid out in black and white. Thursday morning, I handed her the notebook as Daniel loaded his suitcase into the car. Everything you need to know is in here, I told her. The house is yours. She took the notebook, barely glancing at it. Thanks. I'm sure it'll be fine. Daniel hugged us both and drove away. I watched Melissa watch him leave, already seeing the wheels turning in her head. She probably thought this would be easy. A 2-week vacation from having me around, managing things her way. She had no idea what was coming. I went to my room and stayed there. I had my own small refrigerator that I'd moved in earlier, stocked with simple meals. I had my books, my television, my peace. I emerged only to use the bathroom or sit in the garden. The house was hers to manage. Day 1, she seemed confident. I heard her making phone calls, laughing with friends. Around dinner time, I smelled something burning. She had ordered pizza. Day 2, the trash didn't go out. I said nothing. Day 3, I heard her on the phone with the plumber. What do you mean it'll cost $300? Just to look at it? By day 4, the kitchen was a disaster. Dirty dishes were piled in the sink. The floor needed mopping. The living room looked like a tornado had hit it. Day 5, she knocked on my door. Eleanor, the washing machine is making a weird noise. Did you check the manual? I asked from my comfortable armchair. Where is the manual? In the notebook I gave you. Page 12. There's also the plumber's number if you need it. She left, frustrated. The washing machine kept making noises. By day 7, she looked exhausted. Her perfect hair was in a messy bun. Her manicured nails had chipped. She wore sweatpants and an old t-shirt. The house was falling apart around her. "How do you do this?" she asked one evening, appearing at my door with tears in her eyes. "How do you manage everything?" "Practice," I said simply. "And appreciation. It's easier to take care of things when people appreciate your effort." She looked at me, really looked at me, perhaps for the first time. I saw something flicker in her eyes. Realization? Shame? I wasn't sure. Day 9, the grocery money ran out. She had spent it carelessly, buying expensive pre-made meals and fancy ingredients she didn't know how to cook. "Can you spot me some cash?" she asked. "Just until Daniel gets back." "I could," I said. "But then you wouldn't learn, would you?" "There's rice and beans in the pantry. You'll be fine." Her face reddened with anger and embarrassment. By day 12, the house was in complete chaos. The garden needed watering. The bills were scattered across the kitchen table, half of them unpaid. The bathroom hadn't been cleaned. Her friends had stopped coming over because the place was such a mess. I watched it all unfold from my peaceful sanctuary, feeling not vindictive, but somehow sad. This was what she had reduced me to. This chaos was what she thought anyone could manage. This overwhelming, exhausting work was what she had dismissed as the job of just a maid. Day 14, Daniel came home early. I was in the garden when I heard his car pull up. I heard the front door open. I heard the silence that followed. Then I heard his voice, shocked and confused. "Melissa? What happened here?" I took a deep breath and walked inside. It was time for the final act. The living room looked like a war zone. Daniel stood in the center of it, his suitcase still in his hand, staring at the disaster around him. Dirty dishes covered every surface. Laundry was piled on the couch. The trash hadn't been taken out in days. The smell was overwhelming. Melissa stood near the kitchen, her eyes red from crying, her clothes wrinkled and stained. "What the hell happened?" Daniel asked, his voice a mix of shock and anger. "Your mother happened," Melissa spat out, pointing at me as I entered the room. "She abandoned me, left me to deal with everything alone." I remained calm, my hands folded in front of me. "I didn't abandon you, Melissa. I gave you exactly what you asked for. You wanted to be the lady of the house. You wanted control. I simply stepped back and let you have it." "That's not fair," she started. "Fair?" The word came out sharper than I intended. "Let's talk about fair, shall we?" Daniel looked between us, confused. "Mom, what's going on?" This was the moment I had been both dreading and anticipating. I took a breath and let the truth finally spill out. "Your wife called me a maid, Daniel. In front of her friends in my own house, she said I was basically just the maid here." The color drained from his face. What?" "I didn't mean it like that," Melissa protested weakly. "It was just a joke." "Was it?" I asked quietly. "Because for 3 years, you've treated me exactly like that. You've ordered me around, dismissed my opinions, thrown out my belongings, and turned my son against me. You've taken everything I built and made me feel like a stranger in my own home." "That's not true," Melissa said, but her voice wavered. "Isn't it?" I turned to Daniel. "When was the last time you asked me how I was feeling? When was the last time you defended me when she was rude? When was the last time you remembered that I'm your mother, not the help?" Daniel's face crumbled. Daniel's face. I saw the guilt wash over him, saw the memories flooding back. All the times he had sided with her. All the times he had let her disrespect me. All the times he had chosen comfort over courage. "I gave her 2 weeks to manage this household," I continued, gesturing to the chaos around us. 2 weeks to do what I've been doing every single day for years. This is the result. And this, Daniel, is a fraction of what I handle. I also worked 2 jobs to put you through college. I also paid the mortgage on this house. I also held this family together when your father left us with nothing." Tears were streaming down Daniel's face now. "Mom, I'm so sorry." "Sorry isn't enough," I said, my voice breaking. "I needed you to see me, to value me, to remember that I'm not invisible. Melissa had collapsed onto the couch, her face buried in her hands. Her shoulders shook with sobs, but I felt nothing for her tears, not after all the ones I had shed in silence. I never wanted to destroy your marriage, I said, softer now. I just wanted respect. I wanted to be treated like a human being, not a convenience. Daniel walked over to me, his arms outstretched, but I stepped back. I need time, I told him. I need to know that things will change. Really change. He nodded, tears still falling. They will. I promise they will. I looked at Melissa. She met my eyes, and I saw something different there now. Not the arrogance or dismissiveness, something that might have been understanding, or at least the beginning of it. Do you know why I didn't fight back before? I asked her. Because I loved my son too much to create conflict. I wanted him to be happy, even if it cost me my dignity. But I realized something these past few weeks. Real love doesn't mean erasing yourself. It means teaching people how to treat you. She wiped her eyes. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't respond. I simply turned and walked to my room, leaving them to sit with the weight of what they had done. Through my closed door, I heard them talking in low voices. I heard Daniel's anger, Melissa's apologies, the sound of them beginning to clean up the mess she had made. I sat on my bed and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not happiness, not yet. But something close to peace. 3 months have passed since that day. The house is different now, not in decoration, but in feeling. Melissa greets me every morning with genuine warmth. She asks my opinion. She helps with chores without being asked. Sometimes I catch her, looking at me with something that might be respect or perhaps gratitude for the lesson I taught her. Daniel has become my son again. He calls me just to talk. He remembers my birthday. He defends me when needed. The wall between us has crumbled, and in its place is something stronger than before. I didn't seek revenge to destroy them. I sought it to remind them that dignity matters. That the work of making a home is real, exhausting, and valuable. That the person doing it deserves honor, not dismissal. I'm not Melissa's maid. I never was. I'm Eleanor, the woman who built this house with her bare hands and her broken heart. I'm the mother who raised a good man, even when he temporarily forgot who I was. I'm the woman who survived, who fought, who refused to disappear. Sometimes the best revenge isn't anger or bitterness. Sometimes it's simply making people see your worth. And now they see me. Did you like my story? Which city are you listening from? If you enjoyed this journey of resilience and respect, don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories like this.